Hello and welcome to the first ever episode of An English Evening with me, your host, Zakariaa Aitouraies. Interesting thing happened just now. I was sitting here for a couple of minutes, not minutes, about 30 minutes up to an hour, just thinking about what exactly am I going to say and how am I going to go about this. And at this moment, I realized that I'm doing exactly what I've been doing for the last couple of years, definitely for the last couple of months. The thing that really stopped me from starting this podcast, which is actually procrastinating and blaming the idea of not having the perfect set, the perfect thing to talk about, the perfect microphone, the perfect camera, the perfect everything. And I was just wondering, like, who do you think you are just to demand that the beginning of something that you're doing should be as perfect as someone's like career? And it's then when I realized that what I should do is just to start, and if it's anything that's interesting, then it's going to be, and if it's not, then it's not going to be, and it is what it is. And the most important thing that I should do is to actually hit the record button on my camera, hit the record button on my microphone. Is just to start. There's some kids outside playing, but yeah. So welcome to my first ever episode of An English Evening, and today's main theme is the idea of starting something new. I realized, why not talk about something that I'm going through right now, which is starting something new and having, quote unquote, the courage to do something new. And then hopefully that would help someone if you have an idea of starting something that you're not really 100%, you're not 100%, you don't 100% believe that it's going to work, or you don't really believe that it's worth it, or you don't have the courage in yourself and the self-confidence to start it. So why not explain to you what I'm going through right now? And yeah. So the first thing that I'm struggling with is the idea of looking stupid doing something new, and perfection and the will to look stupid, because those two things cannot ever exist, especially when you're starting something new. You can never be perfect, and the moment you realize that you are something new, and the moment you say to yourself that I'll give you the permission to look as dumb as you can look, but it will not be something that's permanent, because it's the beginning of something, and it's quite permissible to look dumb and look like a fool when you're starting something new. And that's what I've trying to do. That's what I'm giving myself the permission to do, is the permission to look stupid, the permission to make mistakes. And I'm counting on you, if I ever make a fool of myself, to just like say that what I said is not true, or what I said is not is stupid. And hopefully we can correct each other, and hopefully we can learn from this experience, because this is a new experience for me and for the people around me, dealing with the idea of me like becoming like a podcaster, whatever this means, because it is something new, and it is something that's challenging for me. And we need new things in our lives, because what I am becoming more and more aware of is the idea of, once you're comfortable, and once you think like, oh, I'm actually relaxed, I have like a normal job, I have like a daily schedule, a routine, that's making me feel happy and comfortable, which is not mainly a bad thing. But what is a bad thing is jeopardizing, or having an idea of starting something new and jeopardizing that, and saying, no, I will not start that new thing just because I've worked so hard to find, or to to accomplish this level of comfort that I am in right now. So why should I jeopardize that for this new idea or this new concept that I'm working on? So that's another thing that I've been struggling with, because at this era of my life, I work. I have a great part-time job. I just finished my MA, which is something great. I just finished my master's degree this week, and I went out. I celebrated with some friends. We had some fun. We had some good times, and it was good. So I kind of fell into that comfort zone of having my good part-time job, of having my studies. And some of you might know that I've always been interested in the idea of creating content online. And when I had the idea of doing a podcast, and I just became more and more afraid of starting something new, especially given the fact that I've stopped creating content. I stopped creating content for the good part of the last maybe 2 years, just because of the masters, just because of work. So I had to prioritize those things first. But once I established that level of comfort, that level of stability between work and studies, then the idea of coming back to content starting to come by. And then I started to think, oh, I'm going to start again. I'm going to start a new concept, something I'm not aware of. What if people don't like it? What if I'm not really that good at it? Which are like eligible concerns. The idea of recording a podcast, a long podcast, and dealing with the editing and dealing with the recording, it's not something that's easy. So it's quite normal to have those concerns of what if this doesn't work, because you are making an effort. You are, I wouldn't say wasting your time, but just like giving your time to something. And if it doesn't work, it really, really sucks. And I really want this to work, but the only way to find if it's going to work or not is to actually try. And I've been procrastinating and putting this off for so long that the time came when I had to look at myself in the mirror and say that if you don't start now, you have nothing to blame but you. There's never going to be a perfect time where you have the perfect camera. If you have the perfect camera now, another camera would come. If you have the perfect microphone now, another better microphone would come. If you have like the perfect studio where you can hear no noises, whatever, there will always be something that you're missing. There will always be something that you can use as an excuse not to actually do it. So I had to be true with myself, and I have to give myself a little tough love to just face the truth that if you really are committed to this as much as you say you are, there's no better time to start than now. So yeah. So what happened the last couple of years? For me, what happened is I started my master's, which was like a new beginning for me. I enrolled in a program called Moroccan American Studies, which is like a cultural program, a cultural comparison program between Morocco and America. Like roughly speaking, there are a lot of things within that program, but roughly speaking, it's a cultural comparison between the two countries or the two societies. So that was really interesting for me because I've always been, I'm a guy who really likes to study. I don't mean like always being in a classroom, but I always have the idea of just like consume as much knowledge as I could consume. Especially now that I'm still, roughly speaking, that I'm still young, I still have time to just like study and work at the same time. So I was like, I definitely need to have my master's degree because I need to get my doctorate degree so that I can possibly become a university professor, which is another goal of mine. So I started doing that, and I didn't have time to produce the content that I used to produce, which were like videos on YouTube and vlogs. I used to do like a lot. I came to a point where I had like more than 70 videos, more than 60 videos on YouTube. And it wasn't going that well, but just the idea of creating vlogs, making fun videos with friends, and making like interesting videos about books, about writing, about what I do. That was an interesting beginning to the world of content creation. It really helped me with the sales of my books. It really helped me with gaining some audience that's interested in what I do. But it came a point where I had to delete most of those videos because the main reason that I can think of is that people change. And there are a lot of things that I used to talk about, or a lot of things that I did talk about, that I did discuss. And when I look at them now, I realize that I changed so much that I either think that that's not true, or the world changed so much that that's not really true right now, or I was not really truthful in what I said, and I was saying it to gain some kind of I wouldn't say fame, but just some kind of an audience. And most of the things, the reason why I deleted most of the things is just for the simple reason that it's not me right now. And I feel like if I keep those things, it's a misrepresentation of who I am right now. And I don't believe in most of those things, which was like the main reason why I was so afraid to create content again, because I became afraid, like, what if I say something right now and I look at it a year or so afterwards and I realize that, well, I don't believe in that anymore, or I realize that I'm lying, or I realize that I'm not speaking something that's true, and I had to just like, well, so you correct yourself, you change who you are, and you move on, because that's what life is about. It's about constantly readjusting yourself and the way you see things and the way you conceptualize things to the best way that you can, and hope that whatever comes out of that little thing of your perceptual abilities is something that's really interesting and that people like and that you are proud of. So that's what I am doing right now. I deleted all those videos, most of them at least, and I had to start again, and start with something that's really interesting, and start with something that's really challenging for me, something that's going to keep pushing me. And hence came the idea of starting a podcast. So you might wonder, like, why change from vlogs to a podcast? Well, besides the reason of deleting the vlogs, because it's just realized that they were fun. Yeah, we used to hang out with guys, we used to go out, have some fun, just do stupid videos sometimes, and at the same time try to produce some kind of beneficial content, talking about giving life advice, giving writing advice, reading advice, etc., something that could be beneficial to people. And the idea of a podcast is, first of all, a challenge to me, because it's not very easy to just like talk for maybe 30 minutes up to an hour without sounding stupid. So I had to give myself like some sort of an intellectual challenge, a speaking challenge, if you may, because in order for me to speak for 30 minutes, I at least have to have some kind of a background knowledge of at least like an hour or so that I can talk and make sense of what I talk and not just ramble around about stupid things. So yeah, the idea of a podcast is to, first of all, for me to challenge myself to be as precise as I can be, to be as articulate as I can be, to deliver a message and to talk for an hour or so about something and make things as interesting as they could be. And especially in the English Evening Podcast, because the theme of an English Evening Podcast will, so today we're talking about starting something new, and maybe next week it will be another theme, and I have to, in order for me to just like make a nice introduction, a 20-minute presentation or a 20-minute talk about the next topic that's going to be like next week, I have to research, I have to read a lot, I have to watch videos, I have to do a lot of things in order for me to talk about something and not sound like someone who does not know what they're doing. So I'm challenging myself with this idea of starting a new podcast. And when you challenge yourself, it's the only way that you can grow in a way that's beneficial for you, because we do have the idea of, or we do have the fact that life challenges us every single day, with all aspects of life. It can be like losing someone, it could be like a bad relationship, it could be studies, it could be work, it could be something that you've never thought it was going to happen to you, but just life throws it at you and you don't know how to react to it. So I feel like giving yourself a challenge from time to time, it's like practicing. Let's say you have a boxing match, you do martial arts, or you do boxing, or you do whatever, and before you fight your opponent, you have to have what we call in boxing sparring. You have to go willingly and just like spar with other people, which is like a mock boxing match. And it's not that easy to spar with people, because you might get hurt, you might get punched in the face. And this podcast for me is just me challenging myself before life throws something at me. Maybe in the future I might have to just like lecture, I might have to give more presentations. So the idea of starting a new podcast and talking about something for an hour or so, just me challenging myself, me trying to enhance the ability for my abilities to speak and to think critically and to come up with things on the fly. And yeah, and I'm bound to make mistakes. I'm not saying that I'm going to be perfect, which is like the real concept of this podcast. I'm not going to be perfect. I am going to make mistakes, and the way I'm doing it right now is a mistake for a lot of people who are really advanced in the idea of podcasting. But I am willing to make myself look like a fool. And I think it was Nietzsche. I think it was the philosopher Nietzsche who said that only the fool who can become a champion, because I think it's either Nietzsche or Dostoevsky, but it's one of them. And it's really an interesting idea, because when you give yourself the permission to look stupid at something that you're just starting, you also give yourself the permission to be a champion, or someone who really knows what they're doing. Because when you're a fool at something right now, you're also someone who's trying to be better. And yes, the two things exist. The two things exist at the same time. The idea of, yes, I am a fool, I am stupid, who doesn't know what they're doing, but also I am someone who's trying and who's learning during this experience. So that's the first reason why I wanted to start a podcast, especially this one, especially in English Evening, where just most of the times it's just me talking about something interesting, and hopefully it resonates with people. And the second thing is why I decided for it to be in English. I know that most of my audience is Moroccan. I am Moroccan, and the idea of starting an English podcast is, first of all, English is the best way for me to talk, or to explain myself, or to express my thoughts. Because most of the things that I do, most of the content that I create, and most of the content that I consume is in English. And I came to a level where my internal dialogue, or my internal dialogue, well, sometimes it is dialogue. Sometimes you talk to different versions of yourself, especially if you're a writer. You tend to talk to other characters, etc. But my internal monologue, the way I talk to myself, is mostly in English. The way I think is mostly in English, especially if I'm thinking about something that's intellectual, something that's interesting, something, an idea that I want to discuss. I tend to think about it in English. So it's going to be much, much easier for me to speak in English than Darija. And the second thing is I would like to give the ability for people who also want to practice English, especially the people who want to practice their listening in English, to have this podcast as their way of training their brain to consume English content. So perhaps you're not here for whatever I'm talking about, but you're just here for enhancing your English level, which is also a good thing. You need to have a good level of English these days, and I think more and more people are aware of that. Globalization and the international trading and all of those things. It's just English now is really, really demanded, especially if you want to leave Morocco or if you want to have some kind of an international aspect to whatever that you do. You need to have like at least an intermediate level of English. So hopefully this me rambling about something in English could just help you with your own and possibly motivate you to just like keep trying to better yourself at the language. And third reason and last reason why I started this podcast is just the simple idea of me and my love for, it's kind of a selfish love, because here I am alone talking without someone interrupting me about whatever I want to talk about. And it seems unfair, but it's just my love for creating content and my love for just sharing information and discussing complicated, at least what I would assume as an interesting topic in a complicated manner. Because again, when I talk about something for 20 minutes or so, I'm bound to challenge myself. Like right now, I don't know what I'm going to talk about next, and I'm just challenging myself to think on the spot and possibly sharing an interesting idea and spreading an interesting information that could benefit others. So when I talk about starting something new, perhaps someone else will be motivated to start something new, and they will see me as an example, or whatever that means, or just like see someone who's just as normal as they are, someone who's just like comes from unprivileged background, if you might say, and just doing what they love. And that energy really, really helps others, because the reason why I'm starting this is because I saw people doing what they love, and I saw how enthusiastic and how much zeal they have in life when you really do what you want. And I would never, ever, ever jeopardize my mental health or my physical health to do something that I don't love. And I really, really love the idea of creating content. I really love the idea of just like reading a book and want to talk about it with others. We do this with my friends, and I thought, why not just like ramble about it in a podcast, and hopefully some other people will be motivated to do the same, or learn something new, or practice their English, or whatever. And as I said, it's just it leaves ground for doing something interesting, and it also leaves ground for making mistakes. And the best way to learn something is to actually make a mistake in it. And yeah, and I don't want to miss out on something that I wanted to do just because I was afraid, or I was not sure whether it will work or not. I would never, when I think about myself like 80 years old, and when I think about myself when I'm older, it would be very, very haunting to look at myself in the mirror and say that, and ask myself with like rage in my eyes, why didn't you do that? Why didn't you do what you knew 100% that it was for you. Because at one point, I'm sure there are a lot of people who are lost. I'm sure there are a lot of people who don't know what they do, who don't know what to do or what they're doing. But at a certain point of your life, an idea comes that just will haunt you for the rest of your life unless you really act on it. And if you don't do it, if you don't act on that idea, you will, first of all, you will miss out on an experience. And we only have 80 years to live. And if you miss out on an interesting experience, it's just, that's an experience that you will never have again. That's like a 5 years of your life that you could have learned a lot of things, and you missed out on that because you were afraid of something. You missed out on that because you didn't trust in yourself that much, because you were like me, you're trying to make things as perfect as possible. And it's not a reason, and it's not a reason to really miss out on an experience and not to pull through and not to do what you really want to do. So I don't want to grow up and look at myself in the mirror and say, why didn't you start the podcast, even though you knew 100% that you really, really wanted to do a podcast. And yeah, I really wanted to just like stop myself and say that, okay, you should do that. You should, even though you're going to make a mistake, even though you're going to look like a fool, that's no excuse for not starting. And yeah, that's why I'm starting. And I would like to go over the concept of an English evening. So now we talked about the concept of starting something new, and what's going to come next is what I would like to call like a book of the week. So in each episode of an English evening, you'll have like the main podcast, the main theme where we will discuss something, and then you'll have a book where I will try to discuss a book that I'm reading that I found interesting, and or give you like a book recommendation. And at the end, we will do like a Q&A. I already have some questions from some people on Instagram, some advice and questions. So we will go over that too. So the book of the week today is a book that I'm reading right now. A friend of mine lent me this one. He's a colleague of mine too. It's called Would You Kill the Fat Man? And it has nothing to do with like a fat man per se, but it's the trolley problem and what your answer tells us about right and wrong. So this book is more of like an introduction to the philosophy of morality, the philosophy of right and wrong, and it works around that philosophy within the concept of the trolley problem. So if you don't know what the trolley problem is, a trolley is like a train inside the city. It's like a tram. And the trolley problem is, imagine that you're on the street and the trolley is coming down the street, and there are two ways that the trolley is going to go. There are two tracks that the trolley can take. One track, there are 5 people who are strapped into the track, and if the trolley hits them, they're all going to die. And that's the main track that the trolley is taking. It's taking that way, and it's going to kill those 5 people. But there's also like the side track, the other track that the trolley could take, and you only have a fat man there. And you can see like that thing, that stick that they turn, and the trolley and the train can take the other track. And the question is it permissible? Is it right or wrong to turn the track or to turn the direction of the train so that could hit the fat man? It will stop the train, and you'll have to save, and you will eventually save those 5 people. So the question is, do you have the right, or is it morally right to kill one person in order to save like 5. So this is like the main idea or the main concept of the trolley problem, and the main concept that David Edmonds discusses in Would You Kill the Fat Man? And it's really, really interesting book. And it's, as I said, it's not as deep as like other philosophers have went into the ideas of morality and right and wrong, like Nietzsche, for example. But it is really a nice introduction to that philosophy, and it gives like a lot of other examples. So it's the basic of like the doctrine of double effect, the DDE. And the doctrine of double effect says that if doing something morally good has a morally bad side effect, it's ethically okay to do it, providing the bad side effect wasn't intended. And here comes the idea of intention. Did you actually intend to save those 5 people, or did you actually intend to kill that man? And intention is really, really complicated work, because if you intend to kill if you intend to save those 5 people, then your actions will eventually kill that fat man. So, and it's really, really an interesting concept of dealing with those things. And it gives really a few examples where you found yourself like, what would I do if I were in that problem? And one of those things that that the author gave as an example is, the first thing is the ticking bomb scenario and torture. Let's just say that you work with the police, or you're an investigator, and suddenly you receive a call from someone, and he says that there's a bomb in like a train or an airport, and it's going to kill a lot of people. And by chance or by luck, you find the terrorist who's planning to kill all those people who planted the bomb, and he will never tell you where the bomb is unless you actually torture that person. Now, is it morally right or is it morally wrong to torture that person for some information? And there are a lot of ways to look at this based on the book. Some people say that, well, the scenario itself is unlikely, so there's no need to bother ourselves with it. So let's not think about it, because the scenario itself is really unlikely. And there are some absolutists who say that there is no excuse for torture whatsoever. That there's no, and there's a nice quote. They said, if you let the window open, the air of the medieval times will fill the room. That means if you let an excuse to torture a man, then that clear-cut separation between no and yes is no longer there. Now you have situations. When can we torture someone? Is it okay to torture someone if he kills, if he puts the 5 people at risk? Is it okay to kill someone if he puts 10 people at risk? Like, where's the exactly like the line between the line of when can you torture someone and when not? So there are some other people who are absolutists who say that no, the line is there, no torture, no one deserves that, no matter what they do. They should go to jail, they should like face the penal system as it is, but torture is not us. We're past the medieval times, we're past the idea of torture. And there are some other people who say that if the outcome of torturing that terrorist could save a lot of people, then it is permissible to torture him. That means if the consequences of not torturing that person are very, very dire and bad, then it's okay to torture that person for information. And there are some other people who come after that one and say, well, what if he gives you bad information? What if the idea of just torturing him could just produce like false information? Then you torture the man and you didn't actually save the people, and the bomb goes off and you're dead. And there's another concept that I've found not as much interesting, and some other people say that even the idea of torture should not be discussed. And they use like a philosopher saying that a society is defined by what is undiscussable in it. That means there are things in society that should never be questioned. And on a personal level, I don't think that's a good way to look at it, because at one point in time in history, the idea of slavery was unquestionable. The idea of having people who are free and especially, like, let's take African Americans for example. There were times in America, I believe, where the idea of telling white people that black people are just the same as them, it was undiscussable. And if we hadn't discussed that idea, if we didn't actually talk about it, then we wouldn't be at the level in which we are right now. So in my opinion, there's nothing that's undiscussable. There's nothing that we should like be afraid to talk about. And I always believe that yes, we should talk about everything, especially like the really, really difficult things that people are afraid to talk about, because only if we talk about them are we able to, first of all, not be afraid of them, and second of all, if they cause us a problem, then talking about them, having different perspectives on them, having like some kind of a healthy dialogue or a healthy debate about those things is what's going to produce some kind of a solution, if we are ever to find some kind of a solution for those things. So yeah, that idea of not having something that's not discussable, it's something that I find really, really difficult to accept. Another scenario that the book talks about is the scenario of like, and this really happened. I think it happened in Germany. A son of a very, very rich man was kidnapped, and the police received like a note saying that if you ever want to see this kid again, just like bring me all this money and whatever. And they actually found, through some kind of an investigation, they found the kidnapper. And at first he would not give them the information of the kid's whereabouts. He would not give them the information of where he is, whether he's alive or not. And again, they threatened him with torture, and there was a huge backlash in society. That first of all, they said that only because the kid was a son of a very rich and respected person in the area, country, whatever, that the police went that far as to ask for permission to torture that person. That's the first thing. And the second argument was that, again, the absolutist argument that there's no reason whatsoever, there's no reason to torture that person. Like, there's no excuse for torture. So there were those two arguments, and at the end, the man finally gave in. The kidnapper finally gave in, and he told them that the kid is actually dead, and you'll find him in a river somewhere. And again, the backlash, they said that if you tortured that person and the kid is already dead, then the kid is dead, and you tortured and you infringed a person's human rights. So, but the police commissioner at that time, he said something interesting. He said whatever that he said that the people just kept saying what's wrong and what's right, but no one said what they would do if they were in my place. And it is a difficult place to be in. Like, imagine you have a kid's life at jeopardy, and the person who's jeopardizing the kid's life is right there next to you, and you have this means of torture that might give you information to save the kid's life. But first of all, you don't know whether the kid's life is there, whether the kid is alive or not, and you infringe a human and you put a human rights into jeopardy as well. So yeah, it is a very, very tough situation to be. And we find ourselves in these situations all the time, and that's why I said again, that's why reading, for me at least, is really important. And the last example that I will give you about the book is my favorite example so far, which is the it's taken from the brothers Karamazov. And the brothers Karamazov, there's a scene where Ivan, who's an atheist, is talking to his brother, who's a very, very religious person who's trying to become a priest, and he's discussing the existence of God, and they're discussing the existence of God, and Ivan, the atheist, tells Alyosha, the guy who's trying to become a priest, he says that if I give you the chance to create a perfect world, a world of like happiness and joy, but in order for you to create that perfect world, you have to torture and kill a young girl. And they were here talking about an event that actually happened in Russia, where two parents, they were fed up with their little girl's crying because she was asking for water at night. And what they did is that they left her out in the cold, and she died by the morning, and she didn't survive. And Dostoevsky read that in the paper, and he included that in the brothers Karamazov. And when Ivan said that to Alyosha did not answer him, because he put him again in the doctrine of double effect. Would you jeopardize someone's life for the benefit of all others? And yeah, it's something that's really, really hard to find an answer for. So yeah, if you would really want to check out an interesting book, David Edmonds, I'm still reading it, by the way. I'm on page, I'm around page 70. So all those things that I've talked about, and I'm still just around page 70. So as I said, it's a really good introduction to the philosophy of right and wrong, and the idea of morality. So yes, let's move on now to questions, Q&As, and advice. I've asked people on my Instagram to if they have anything that they would like me to give them advice on, or if they have a question. So first question is, do you need to study creative writing to be a writer? From my experience, if you deem me as good, I would say no. But here there are two to three things that we should talk about. Is the idea of study, like what do we mean by study, and what do we mean by creative, and what do we mean by a writer? Like those are the things that caught my attention when I read the question. Like, what do you mean study creative writing? Is it let's just like going through workshops and just going through classes, or just watching videos, whatever? And there's also the question of whether can you study creativity. I mean, creativity seems it seems more of a characteristic, a human characteristic that you have, and it's we don't know what creativity is, or at least I don't know what creativity is to tell you that you can study it or not. I mean, I don't know what does it mean to, how can you study creativity when creativity is so complicated in itself? Like creative people, and I'm not putting myself in that, or at least not into the level in which I deem, like in which I really say that that's creative. I don't. All right. Sorry about that. I had to cut. There was some noise around the house, and it was really bothersome. So I had to ask them ever so politely to stop. I wasn't polite. Anyways, as I was saying, the idea of studying creative writing is it's problematic to me, because I can't say that we have the ability to teach creativity, because first of all, it's really, really difficult to know what creativity is and how to distinguish a creative person from a non-creative person, which is also another debate. Is creativity something that's for all, or are just some people are just lucky to be creative, more creative than others? And there is some literature that says that creativity is not for everyone. There are some people are more creative than others. That's why you have talented artists and not so talented artists. But the idea of studying creative writing to me seems questionable. But you can learn how to write. You can learn some tricks to help you writing, and those things will definitely help you become a better writer. And the the easy answer for this is no. You don't need to study in some kind of a formal way creative writing to be a writer. All you need to do to become a writer, especially if you have that ability or if you have that interest, is just to sit down and actually do the writing. That's the only way that's the only place when you're a writer, and that's the only way where you can be a writer, because a writer is just someone who sits down and writes. um, that's the definition. Like, you can't just sit down and just like be interested in writing and tell people that you're a writer. No, that's not how it goes. To become a writer, you have to just sit down and sweat just as much as the other writers do, and just to write all the nonsense out, and so that you might find something interesting that you might be proud of. So no, but you can enhance your creativity, I think, by reading other people's creativity or reading other people's works. That's a way of showing you what's good and what's bad, and you can do all those things to just like enhance your writing skills. So yeah, as long as you're writing, at least to me, you are a writer. Whether you're a good writer or a bad writer, it doesn't really matter, as long as you're writing. And if you write and write and write, and at one point you'll stumble and you'll write something good. Yeah. Second question was best advice to give to the students who will start their masters this year. Oh, that's quite interesting. Um, don't do what I did, which is doing every assignment in the last minute. That's it adds so much unnecessary stress to your life. So manage your time well, and especially with your assignments, because your masters is just, it's all about assignments. The lectures that you have inside, they're not as much as demanding as the assignments are, especially if you do like a research leaning type of masters. So when you have to write papers, be consistent with your reading, be up to date with your assignments. Don't let things I know I'm saying this, and 100% some of you will just do what I did and say, well, you did it and you graduated. But it added so much stress, unnecessary stress, that with just a little bit of time management I could have avoided easily. So that's the first thing. Don't do what I did, and don't leave your assignments until the last minute. And the second thing is that I would want you to do is just show up and show interest, especially if you want to pursue a doctorate, especially if you're doing something that you like. Is just show up and show that you're interested in what you're doing, even though there would be some things that might seem as boring, but just show up and try to find something interesting in them. And that would definitely help you, first of all, because when you show interest in something, you're more likely to be actually interested in it, and that would help you make a good impression with your classmates and your professors. So that's always showing up and showing interest. It goes a long way, especially if you would like to continue your studies after your MA. People will understand that you're serious. People will understand that that's not just some guy or girl who just coming in to have a degree and go. No, they're actually interested in this. So if you ever need anything, they will tell you to just like email us, come by. We'd like to help, because there are a lot of professors, even though there are some really bad ones, but there are a lot of professors that all you need to do is just show that you're interested, and they could really help you, and that help could go a long way. So yeah, and the last thing and the last question is actually advice. Advice for a 16-year-old. If you're just listening to this, I'm actually squinting while looking at the monitor because it's a little too far away. So advice for a 16-year-old. What kind of advice would I give to a 16-year-old? I actually have a brother who's roughly around the same age, but the best advice that I can give you is just don't be too arrogant. And I don't mean like arrogant in the sense that think you're better than others, but in the sense that you think you know things. Um, I fell into that trap when I was around that age and roughly younger. I used to think that, well, there aren't a lot of things that are interesting in the world, and because first of all I was only 15, 16, so I didn't really experience much of the world, and it was the utmost level of arrogance to say that there's nothing that's interesting about the world, or there's nothing that's interesting about studying or whatever, because I was just someone who's just starting in life. 15, 16, it's still young, so you don't have much experience in life to begin with. So that's the first thing. I wouldn't go around acting like I know things, or I wouldn't go around being as arrogant not to ask for advice, not to. So that's what I like about this person who sent this question, is that they know that they need advice, is that they know that a piece of advice can go a long way. So that's the first thing. Never be too arrogant to think that you're better than others, or that you think you know everything. So never. And the second thing is, once you realize that you don't know everything, you have now the opportunity to learn as many things as possible. So most 16-year-olds, most 15-year-olds, they haven't found quote unquote their calling yet. They haven't found something that they're really interested in. Some of them did, which is very, very interesting, and I consider those as lucky people. But most of 16 up to 25, sometimes until 30, some people are just lost and they don't know what to do. And for that, I would just experience as many things as possible, because how can you find something that you're interested in and you haven't tried as many things as possible? It doesn't seem it doesn't make any sense. How can do you just expect a dream or an interest or a hobby or a good book or whatever to just you would stumble upon it while you're just like sitting at home? It's highly unlikely. So the second advice that I would give you, which is like really, really, I wish I experienced more when I was a teenager, because I was really in just like that in my bubble. And I don't want to blame like where I grew up. I don't want to blame my circumstances. That was no excuse. But I wish I experienced many things as possible, because only through experiencing as many things as possible that you might be lucky enough to find one thing that you go, oh, this seems interesting. Let me just look around this, and possibly you find it interesting and you make a career out of it, and possibly not. I remember I read one English book and I thought that there's something that's interesting in this book, and next thing you know, I'm writing books myself and I'm basing my life around this intellectual realm, if you might say it that way. But hadn't I been curious enough to just like pick up a book and read it for the love of just like trying a new thing, hadn't I done that, I don't think I would be here right now. So you don't know what your life would be if you try something new. So never be afraid of trying new things. Never be afraid of experiencing life. You're just 16. You still have a lot of things to do. And if you mess up, that's okay. Because guess what? You're only 16. You're only 20. I mean, hopefully you'll have a long life to live. And if there's any time to make a mistake, if there's any time to try new things, it will be right now. And the more you do of those things, the better. So, yeah, try new things and don't be arrogant. And the second thing is just don't forget to have fun. Because I see these kids who are really, really, um, who are, I wouldn't say too serious, but who do seem like they're too serious. And I can't help but wonder if they're missing out on fun, because fun is a really, really huge part of being a teenager and being a kid. And if you don't socialize well, if you don't have fun, if you don't make like friendships, or at least one or two good friendships, then you really are missing out. And you don't want to miss out on something as beautiful as friendships. And granted, you might be afraid that friendships might come and go, but friendships are just the same as interests. They come and go, but you'll always learn something from those things. So don't be afraid to be stupid. Do controlled, reckless things, as I would call them. Challenge yourself, challenge your physique. At 16 was around the time that I started working out, and I started being interested in sports, and that helped me. I think it was the most important thing that I've ever did, besides being interested in reading and writing and all those things. The most important thing that I've ever did is became interested in boxing and in bodybuilding and fitness. It changed my life so radically that it's almost unrecognizable. Physically, I'm unrecognizable because I was very, very skinny when I was young. When I was 14, 13, all the way up to 16, I was really, really skinny, and I did used to get bullied for that, because first of all, I had a big mouth, and second of all, I was very skinny. So those things didn't really help me. But at around 16 was when I realized that, yeah, I need to first of all, I need to look better, because I was not something good to look at, physically speaking. But it also helped me in controlling my impulses. It helped me it grounded me, mentally speaking, to the level that if I go out like a week or two without going to the gym, I would be mentally in a very, very bad place. So yeah, that would actually be my third and most important advice. Is 16 is like a perfect time to start thinking about your physical health, because your hormones are really, really peaking right now. So if you start, for example, doing fitness or bodybuilding at this time, it could go a long way, and it could really, really help you, first of all, look good. If you're skinny, if you're fat, it will help you like maintain a healthy body. And trust me, I know most people know this. When you have a healthy body, excuse me, everything around your life becomes much, much better. Your mental health is better. Your relationship with others are better. Your sleep is better. Your performance in whether you're working or in school, it becomes better. So working out goes a long way. I don't imagine myself not working out, not doing some kind of sports. And yeah, once you start, especially if you don't like going to the gym or whatever, just do anything. But once you start noticing like progress in terms of your skills, if you're doing like martial arts or you're training some kind of a sport, or once you start realizing that, oh look, I'm losing fat or I'm gaining muscle, once you start seeing that progress and it really hits you, then there's no way back. You realize that yes, fitness is important. So that would be my last advice. So I think we're around almost 1 hour right now. Oh, look, that's quite a milestone. All right, so that was first ever episode of An English Evening. Thank you guys who submitted their questions. I hope this was of interest to you, and I'll see you next week. Bye.